It's going to be pretty low energy.
It's going to be pretty low energy, huh?
Yeah, only the second cup. But once I get up to the 7th or 8th, then the lunatic fridge is coming out.
Yeah, definitely, man. So how's your week going so far?
So far, so great. I think we talked about it, but, I kind of juggle a lot of gigs between the podcast and the article and other freelance work, so kind of never a dull moment, and I like it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, why don't we just take a minute or so to plug your podcast? Like, what have you talked about lately? And you did an interview with Carmella, and just kind of interested to see what she talked about, what her personality is like, and what you think of her character as well in WWE.
Sure. So the Darren Paltrowcast with Darren Paltrowitz, I've shortened it since then, so now it's the Paltrowcast with Darren Paltrowitz because, you want a shorter name, don't you? And it's a compilation of the interviews that I do for a lot of my publications. And so some episodes might be one musician, one comedian, one professional wrestler, or it might be an actor, a wrestler, and a comedian. It's kind of a mix of the stuff that I'm into. And so as you said, this latest episode has Carmella on it. I actually interviewed her as Leah Van Dale. Sometimes you see her written as Leah Van Dam. I'm not sure what that's about, but Leah has a new wine on the market, and so I spoke to her mostly about the wine, and then she brought up some WWE stuff, and she was very nice about it, and we talked about, her fitness regimen and how life on the road can be a grind, but how she never thought that she was going to be a wrestler to begin with. And I found her to be very, very nice, very relaxed, and very honest.
Oh, that is awesome. And what do you think of her character so far? Like her work that, personally, I prefer her heel work. Like when she would say Mella's money, I loved her as a cocky heel. But how do you feel about her as like a babyface with R-Truth?
That's a great question. One of the staples of her working with R-Truth is showing off her dancing. And, of course, WWE likes to put up that factoid that she was on a Rihanna tour, and she's a professional dancer, and she was a cheerleader and all that. So, of course, as a wrestler, you should always be showing off your strong points, which they're doing with that. But I agree with you that hell of a heel, really, really convincing. And, unfortunately, the way that WWE booking has been the past few years, they don't really stick with characters long term. So when we think about how she was introduced, she was part of the Enzo and Cass faction. Mm-hmm. Then she had that weird between her Bay Mella thing. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I was kind of lost during that part. I couldn't figure out what they were doing.
Yeah, so depending on the day, she's from Staten Island, which she is not, or she's friends with Bailey, which I guess is supposed to make her salt of the earth, or she's a dancer, or she's with R-Truth, she's his voice of reason, or she's spoiled and mean. Obviously they are just going, okay, so today you're going to be blank. So she has a lot to deal with there, and of course I didn't ask her anything of that nature in the interview. I wanted to keep it polite and get to, who the real Leah is. And sometimes my heart goes out to these WWE performers, not only because of the sacrifices they make, but the fact that they don't know what they're going to be doing in a week. Like if you said, hey Darren, what are you doing next week? Where are you going to be? And I didn't know, I think I'd be a little bummed.
Oh, me too. I don't like the feeling of uncertainty either.
Yeah, so I think that she's doing the best with what she can, and she's a naturally talented person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, I really like, one of the absolute few things I think WWE has going for them is the 24/7 title, and I like the work with, I think R-Truth is, first of all, he's a national treasure. There is no denying R-Truth, and I just like the work. To me, it brings about the comedy side of wrestling. What do you think of the angle that they're doing with 24/7? The 24/7 title, I should say.
I wish that they would call it what it is, the hardcore title, because it's the same exact rules. It's, people chasing each other around, comedic effect. What was the title change that happened at a Chuck E. Cheese or a Funko Land? Was that with a Dudley?
I thought it was with Crash Holly. The one thing I remember is like Crash Holly going through like it looked like a ball pit and and then they went down a slide. I thought that was hilarious.
Absolutely. I think that's great. If you're a wrestling purist, you may hate that kind of stuff, but I do come from the philosophy that wrestling should be like the circus. You want to see a bunch of different people with different skill sets that bring about different emotions. And, if this is the comedy portion that we're going to get, great. Or if this is the unpredictability thing that we're going to get, great. But to not call it the hardcore title when this is clearly the hardcore title, the hardcore belt was a joke, and this is a joke-looking title, too. Mm-hmm. And if you were to compare, the last 5 or 6 big things that WWE did, and you say there's this, the Superstar Shakeup, the Wild Card Rule, and all that, the 24/7 Championship is the best by a long shot. I mean, all those other things are disasters that you want to look away from.
Oh, so you even think the Firefly Funhouse segment with Bray Wyatt, you don't like that segment, I take it?
I love the idea of it, but there's no clear path as to what they can do with that relates to the in-ring wrestling.
Oh,
so is he going to wrestle in a mask now? There's too many question marks for us to really know. And I thought that Bray Wyatt was really a special performer even without that. Any character they gave him, except for Husky Harris, except for that one that they gave him, he knocks it out of the park. And people forget he was a world champion for a little while. And anything that guy does, he doesn't need a title to be a special attraction. So I think that this weird kind of gimmick, it could have been done with a person who is perhaps less special, but I think we're too early in the process. He hasn't wrestled a match yet in this character for us to really know what it is. Is this just the product of someone pitching an idea to Vince McMahon and it going through the editing machine and it's no longer what it resembled? I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the most recent one, I'm just kind of, like you said, I mean, I think the segments are brilliant, but I think there needs to be, I would like to see, I can't think of the witch's name in there. I can't think of her name for the life of me, but I would like to see her, develop into be like Sister Abigail, finally reveal who Sister Abigail is and all that stuff. And I noticed that there is some kind of they kind of bring up Waylon Mercy using Mercy the Buzzard too. I think that's I think that's pretty cool, and just to me, he has Hollywood actor written all over him. He would be a great villain in a horror movie, and So
I totally agree with everything you're saying, but what we do have to think about is all the times that WWE started an angle, or really any wrestling company, where they started an angle, and then it wasn't continued or was dropped out of nowhere. So, for example, Mr. McMahon's limousine exploded, and he was supposed to be dead. Oh, okay. He's still on TV 18 years later. Shane McMahon was being fired as his team lost at Survivor Series or one of those. Okay, he's the best in the world. Because they have a habit of not continuing storylines for, injuries or contractual reasons or whatever it is, I don't have the automatic faith to go, okay, well, they're going to pay off who the Sister Abigail thing is.
Yeah, or when they had something with the lockbox in the Shane McMahon versus the Undertaker feud, and to me that was that was just a cluster to me, because they should have had the Undertaker come back as a heel and basically aligning himself with Vince McMahon on this one, and then they could have did a turn at WrestleMania where the Undertaker somehow Vince McMahon caused the Undertaker, and it would start up that feud, and it would have revealed the lockbox sort of thing, and then they dropped the ball with that. I was just and that WrestleMania to me is only remembered for literally one thing, that Shane McMahon jumping off the cell, and I'm with you there,
and I think if we name every single superstar right now, we could pick 2 or 3 stories that didn't get paid off. Like, who is Diamond Dallas Page's benefactor that stopped him from being homeless? Do you remember that storyline?
Actually, I don't. Can you refresh my memory?
There was some kind of a storyline in WCW where Diamond Dallas Page was down on his luck and he was living on the streets, and then a limousine pulled up and basically pulled him in, almost like a ZZ Top video. And who is this person that's saving his life? I mean, if you put that on paper, that's pretty great. But when you think about that, when you think about, Dean Ambrose in his last few months in WWE, about how he needed a gas mask because the crowd smelled so terrible. So he had all those people at the gas mask, and then a week or 2 later, oh no, these are my people. Wait, what?
Yeah, I know it. And that was, I think that was...
Where did the authority go? Where did J&J security go? There's so many things that when we talk about somebody like a Carmella, and you go, you have done the best that you can do with what you've given times 10. Keep it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, people can't really blame the wrestlers. They're only given what the writing team gives them. And speaking of Dean Ambrose or Jon Moxley, did you listen to his podcast with Chris Jericho?
Oh, yeah, fantastic, right?
Oh, it was incredible. It almost sounded like, this is going to sound like a really crappy adage, so forgive me for this, but it sounded like he was released from prison. Like he had his first taste of freedom for the first time, and I don't know, he just seems like the weight of the world was lifted off his shoulders,
Yeah, I think that a lot of that is rooted in something that people haven't realized until the last few years, which is that wrestlers are artists. This is their creative outlet. It's not just, this is a big guy, and this is a big guy who fake fights. That was the narrative for decades. And now with people like the Daniel Bryans and the Jerichos and the Moxleys of the world and the Omega, I mean, the list goes on. But we're kind of realizing that these are people that put a lot of time and care into who the character is, what their merchandise looks like, what their matches are. And for obvious reasons, WWE doesn't want you to think of them as the creative people. They want you to think that they created these characters and, these are their creations, and the second that they're done with them, well, their career is over, and obviously that's very, very different from the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so speaking of Jon Moxley, what did you think of his his build-up? Do you remember the promo where he kind of busted out of prison and then he wrapped the barbed wire around his fist or whatever? Did you think that it was a big elaborate work at the time WWE was put on, or did you think he was actually going to AEW at the time?
I went from going, oh, he's obviously going to AEW, to, oh, maybe it is a work, to, no, he's going to AEW. Sometimes the rumors that are turning out to be totally false come from credible places, and I think this is one where he revealed what he really was going to be doing to so few people, and AEW kept everything so close that you really, really didn't know. I think we could say the same thing about Jericho popping up in New Japan that first time. No one knew that was going to happen because, rewind a year or 2 before that where he said he was never going to wrestle for another company, and then it was he's never going to wrestle for another company in North America. Some people are super good at keeping secrets, and then other people like Eli Drake posted a fake thing saying, guess who's going to be there tomorrow, a photo of him in Vegas or something like that. And so some of these people are really good at secrets, some of these people are good at stirring stuff up, and in turn, people like you and me are going to get misled all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I was going to say, speaking of AEW, Double or Nothing, what did you think of the show overall?
It's not perfect. I don't think you can expect any pay-per-view to be perfect because what I want in a match could be totally different from you. I could want more laughs than you. You could want more brutal fighting, etc., etc. But there's a couple things that can't be disputed, and one of them is that they included people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s on the card. They included talent you've never heard of, rising indie talent, a couple of legends. They included people with disabilities and of different orientations, so it was truly an all-inclusive nature. They did have pyro, lighting, pyro, sound, all the same kind of stuff that WWE would give you. And so even if you didn't like a few matches, if you take what I said about the circus, like you want to see a little of this, a little of that, a little of that, you got that. And then the ending was awesome, even if you were down and on the beginning. What did you think?
I was gonna say, I love the all-inclusive environment feel that they have. I think that's where WWE kind of misses a boat on a lot of things. I mean, like, to me, there's no excuse for WWE not to have their first African American champion until this year. The Cody versus Dustin Rhodes match, honestly, that was probably top 5 greatest match I've ever seen. And I'm not being sarcastic. It just, the emotion and the storytelling it kept you on the edge of your seat the whole time. And I've always been a big Dustin Rhodes fan, even back when he was a natural in WCW to Goldust to now. Yeah. And that guy could still go like no other in the ring, in my opinion. Incredibly underrated and underappreciated worker. That was my favorite part. And, of course, Jericho and Omega killed it. That was my first time watching a Kenny Omega match, and I'm like, I could see why there's all this hype on him.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Although I have seen Omega before. My wife and I had the pleasure of being on the Jericho cruise last year, and we will be going next January, which, wow, that's 6 months away. Time to start getting in shape. But I look at that AEW pay-per-view, and you say, even if you didn't love some of the matches, that is better than any WWE pay-per-view I've watched in the last, I don't know, definitely the last couple of years. I love the Royal Rumble concept. Admittedly, AEW has to work on this Battle Royal concept. That wasn't easy to understand. It's not logical. Like, okay, so 5 guys come in at a time, and well, why would those 5 people not be fighting each other onto the ring? Why would they peacefully be going into the ring?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the logic of the Joker at the end? I get that you're in Las Vegas. That's fantastic. So that there's 21. I get it, but keep it simple, stupid, as they say, KISS. So that needed work, but I loved the Royal Rumble growing up. I still love the Royal Rumble. Even a bad Royal Rumble, to me, is still a pretty good Royal Rumble. Mm-hmm. And even if we were to put that bad stuff aside, again, it's still much better and more consistent than any pay-per-view that we've watched. That WrestleMania that we just saw, that was, 7.5 hours, if you factor in the pre-show? Mm-hmm. Let's say there was 2.5 hours of good content in there, which may be shooting high on the estimate end. 2.5 hours being good out of 7.5. That's a terrible batting average.
Oh yeah, it sure is. Yeah, I think that's where sometimes too much is too much, and I think that's where WWE is kind of losing people, because it's a lot of work. Like, as a wrestling fan, to watch hours of content, then you have this hours-long pay-per-view on top of that, then you have the pre-show, and I think where people are getting burned out in WWE is, it seems like every week they book the same matches, and the matches are the same to me. They have to get certain spots in, they have to get, they have to make sure that, it's like watching a rerun to me, I mean, I miss the days where, like the old school wrestling, when there were squash matches and when they're, build the character, I mean, to me, there's really no character development, and that's probably why I loved the Cody and Dustin Rhodes match so much, because, I mean, I remember even just seeing the results and then watching the match, I was like almost on my feet cheering for Dustin Rhodes even after I knew who won the match, I mean, just because Dustin Rhodes has such an amazing way of getting the crowd behind him, and
yeah.
I mean, he plays the sympathetic babyface like few people I've ever seen. I mean, I mean, yes, I'm a big Dustin Rhodes Goldust fan. He's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, but, you know.
I hear you on all ends. I agree with you. And I take things like applying non-wrestling philosophy into wrestling. And I'm assuming you're a couple years younger than me, but growing up, when you put on the radio station or MTV, that's all you had. You had to listen to the hits and what was popular at the time. So everyone knew the same exact thing. And then now moving today to Spotify, YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, etc., we can all be in our own bubbles. You follow me so far?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And we all have our own podcasts that we love. A lot of us listen to even have our own podcast. And when you look at that 24 hours in the day, and you go, okay, depending on who we are, you know, now that I'm on my third cup of coffee, you go, well, I'm going to sleep somewhere between 4 and 8 hours if I'm lucky. And I'm going to be working on the average work day of like, 6 to 11 hours, factoring in the commute, whatever the circumstances are. And eating's going to take up an hour, and showering's going to... And then you go, okay, so all I really have to enjoy today, at best, is 3 hours of content. Do you really want to spend those 3 hours on Raw? No, you really want to go, well, there's 3 great minutes from there. There was a great Jimmy Fallon sketch there that I can watch for 4 minutes. There was a cool Howard Stern thing for 4 minutes. You really want highlights. So on that kind of mentality, you have to think, is WWE really giving you a lot of highlights, or are they giving you lots of, hey, if you missed it, 10 minutes ago this happened? Are they doing that 3 times every show? Yes. So, for best use of time, I think that the average wrestling consumer is most likely going, well, those 3 hours, I'll listen to one podcast, I'll DVR Raw, I'll DVR this thing, that thing, but they don't want to spend all 3 hours on wrestling per se.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say, like, I didn't watch Raw from this past Monday. I've gotten to the point to where I just basically just read up on the highlights and just try to keep up. I might catch a monthly pay-per-view, but it didn't really seem like I missed much. And really the only 3 things I want to see is R-Truth, because the 24/7 segment is hilarious to me. I love comedy and wrestling, and we'll talk about that in another podcast, like some of our favorite comedy moments. And Brock Lesnar with his beatbox or boombox or whatever you call it is hilarious to me.
Agreed.
And the Bray Wyatt Firefly Funhouse segment. And instead of waiting 3 hours for that segment, I'll just tune in the next day on YouTube and just catch the YouTube video, see what I missed from it. But they didn't have one match in the first hour. And it's just like, I can't imagine buying a ticket and sitting there for 1 hour and not even seeing one wrestling match in the first hour.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 years ago, my wife and I went to, I don't think it was the WrestleMania. It was maybe the Monday Night Raw after SummerSlam or something like that. One of those we saw it at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. And it was the infamous show with the beach balls where that instituted the ban of no more beach balls and people, that kind of thing. And there are so many moments when you go to a live Raw where it's dead air, where they go to commercial, but there's 2 people in the ring, and they shut down the spotlight on top of the ring. So if you look in the ring, you see 2 people just in their corners stretching. Or, they go to commercial break, and one person, the heel, takes a mic. Pardon me, I don't think you have a cough button on this podcast, but one person is outside the ring with a mic, and it's just going, I hate Brooklyn, I hate New York, so that the people are booing, so that it comes back from break, and you just hear boos, and you go, oh, something must have happened during the break. I mean, they don't really reward you with any kind of exciting thing, the way that if you went to a talk show. Have you ever been to a TV taping of a talk show or anything like that?
I never have.
Okay, not to pull the curtain back too much, but when I used to go to see Conan O'Brien a lot as a kid, or as a high school student, before the show, like you wait around for an hour, hour and a half in line, whatever, but before the show, Conan O'Brien comes out, he sings a song or two as a joke, the Max Weinberg 7 plays a song or two, The sidekick does a thing or two. They talk to you a little bit. Hey, where you from? The warm-up comedian. They don't have anything like that for Raw. So it's tired, you know? It's not, there's no incentive not to just watch it on TV. That's my point.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to a Raw in Des Moines. It was lead up to WrestleMania 31, back when like Triple H was going to fight Sting, and Randy Orton, for some unknown reason, turned babyface and turned on the Authority, which that Randy Orton Seth Rollins angle was so confusing beyond belief. And literally, there was a 6-man match that was decent. But I literally sat there for 3 or 4 hours and waited for Sting to save Randy Orton. And the crowd was deafening. So basically, I waited 3 hours for a 3-minute segment, you know. But seeing Sting in person was so worth it, though. Yeah, that was really cool. So.
But if I compare that to, I went to an indie show last night in a town on Long Island near where I am from. It's Create a Pro, which Kurt Hawkins co-owns with Pat Buck, and they had MJF on the show, Scarlett Bordeaux from Impact, and who was the third person of note on the show? That's not a good thing that I'm not remembering right now. Oh, how did I forget? Ty Dillinger, aka Sean Spears, his first ever indie appearance aside from AEW, and maybe 200 people there in a VFW hall, but it was such a blast. Like, I didn't know who most of the people were that were performing, but you could quickly grasp from the entrance of like, oh, that's the baby face, that's the heel. Are all the matches perfect? No, but it was entertaining. It reminded me of going to punk rock shows as a kid and going, oh, okay, that's why I love this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say, like, I've been to a couple indie shows. We have an indie league in Iowa, and Seth Rollins, like 10, 12 years ago, started cutting his teeth in Iowa. So, I mean, and a couple of my friends got to actually work with Seth Rollins when he was starting out, so... And they said how incredibly down-to-earth he was and stuff like that. So, speaking of indie wrestling, what is, like, give me, like, 3 of your favorite indie wrestlers, and where does AEW go from here after Double or Nothing?
The first person that I'm a big fan of is the one I just said the name of, and that is MJF. In my opinion, at this point in time, he can do no wrong. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion when it comes to, oh, that guy's good in the ring, that guy's not good in the ring. But his promos are like nobody else's. He can draw more heat than anybody. That interview that just went up of him and Chris Van Vliet, I don't know if you've seen that yet. Have you?
I haven't. I check out some of Chris Van Vliet stuff. He does fantastic interviews.
This one is not like any other Chris Van Vliet interview you've ever seen. If you don't love/hate MJF after this one, you're not a wrestling fan. He's just the best. And another person that I love, even my wife is a huge fan of him right now, Orange Cassidy. I knew the name before AEW because I heard Taz talking about him on his podcast. You hear the names of these people. I'd never seen Orange Cassidy until that Battle Royal. After I did, wow. I've watched a bunch of his matches online. I've listened to Jim Cornette talk about how much he hates him. Sometimes I'm in line with what Jim Cornette says, because I think that he is playing a character to an extent, but I do think that that is a smart person that's been in this business, 40, 45 years? He does know some stuff. If he is saying that a wrestler's doing everything wrong, in my opinion, it's usually they're doing everything right and he's off, or he's totally on. I think it's one or the other. So you look at, like, his criticism of Kevin Owens. He was totally wrong. He totally missed the boat on that. He totally missed the boat on Joey Janela, in my opinion. But I don't know. He might be right about Joey Ryan. I don't know. That's a controversial point for another time. But those are my 2 favorites at the moment. What about you?
Probably my two favorites. I don't know if you classify him as indie, but probably Cody. I think he just really elevated his career after he left WWE, and there's another that it's a tag team that I really like just because they're brutal and everything like that. The Briscoe brothers. Every time I watch a Briscoe brothers match, I'm just blown away, and I'm trying to think of the guy's name. He used to be Sami Callihan in NXT. He's in Impact Wrestling now. Gosh, what was his name?
Solomon Crowe. You're talking about Sami Callihan or a guy that worked with him?
Oh, yeah, Sami Callihan. I got that right, didn't I? I was thinking of Solomon Crowe in NXT. I got the names mixed up, but...
Yeah, Solomon Crowe is the NXT character, which I never saw, but I read the names of it. Sami Callihan is who he's been in Impact and on the Indies, and he was another guy. I mean, most of the people that you've mentioned as being awesome are people that I saw in the Jericho Cruise last time. And the Briscoes, like, they are the nicest. All these people that you're mentioning are just so nice. Sami Callihan, of course, his character is that he's unstable and he's going to kill you. Nice, gentle human being as well. So I think it's so refreshing in a way. Like, and that's why I wrote the book. But with a lot of these people, you think about who they are behind these characters, and not only is the hard work and the work ethic there and all that, but these are well-rounded people that can actually speak and do stuff. And so refreshing because, you know, the heels that we grew up with, if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s and all that, and you think about, like, the Warlord and the Barbarian and all that, like, what does the Warlord's voice sound like? Do you know?
I have no idea.
You have to go, like, could these people not speak? Did they have rotten personalities? Were they always living the gimmick? I have no idea. Like, I know what the Warlord's real name is from reading old websites, but who's the Warlord? Where is he from? Does he like pizza? I don't know anything. And I love that about wrestling today. I love, of course, the nostalgia of watching old Ric Flair, or DDP, and all that kind of stuff. Even going back to Bruno Sammartino, and going back before that, Antonina Rocca, Argentina Rocca, and Gorgeous George. I love the lineage. We can go even further. But I do love the accessibility of these people. And sorry, that's a long rant there.
Oh, that is quite okay. And I know you brought up DDP and brought up your book. I think that'd be a really cool segue. I happen to open up page 98 where Dean Ambrose is kind of talking about, I never thought I was a bad person. I just thought I was one good person living in a world of bad people. I mean, I know that was written during a time when he was in The Shield and his character in WWE. How would you flip the script in that book to where it relates to the Jon Moxley character today?
The specific quote or the ideology behind that quote?
Either the quote or the ideology of it.
I think that an experience that I've had with interviewing a lot of people that play heels or villains, or they're actors or wrestlers, like William Zabka, who I had on my podcast from Cobra Kai. He played Johnny Lawrence in the Karate Kid movies, a lot of 80s heel stuff, is the nicest freaking guy. And when you take a step back and you think about the whole thing, these people understand character. And a villain doesn't think that they're the villain. They're the ones who think that I'm right, they're wrong, and they're doing things like according to that kind of code. And Ambrose, he always went all in, no pun intended, with his characters. So if they say, you're going to be the most hated person here, he would think, well, what would make the most hated person here? No, you are a man of the people, and you're unstable. Okay, well, what would make me unstable? So I think there was such great character development, and it's a lot different from the approach of just walking in the room going, okay, you're a jerk. In other words, he knew how to draw heat, he knew how to draw a good reaction depending on what he needed to do, and he showed it with that quote that it's not forced. He can just do it if he wants to because he understands who the person he's playing is, like any actor would.
Yeah, absolutely. And So your book is called Good Advice from Professional Wrestling, and what was your 2 or 3 favorite stories that you have from the book? And I know that Diamond Dallas Page wrote the foreword. If you want to plug that part, you sure can. So I'm just going to kind of give you the floor to talk about your book.
Well, the origin of it is my favorite part of the whole process, to be honest. The co-author for this book, DX Ferris, I discovered him because a book he wrote that came out last year called Good Advice from Goodfellas, like the 80s Scorsese movie Goodfellas. I read it. I was a fan of it. I interviewed him, and I basically stayed in touch with him. But during the interview, I asked him a question, and he said, as Diamond Dallas Page once said, blah, blah, blah. And I said, wait, you're a wrestling fan? Because a lot of people kind of keep it close to the chest that they're a wrestling fan. And we stayed in touch, and I basically said, have you ever thought about doing the Goodfellas book except about wrestling? And then he sent me this article that he wrote in 2000 or so, I think for a college newspaper, that was good advice from Goodfellas and wrestling. And he basically said, hey, if you start the book, we'll do it. And I think a lot of people, you say, hey, start a book, and they're going to go, yeah, and then they spend 10 minutes and they go, oh, this is hard. Everyone, if you hang around bars long enough, everyone's going to write a screenplay, everyone's going to write a book, et cetera, and no one actually does it. No one actually moves ahead. So I think DX might have been challenging me a little bit, going, okay, yeah, write a book, yeah, sure. I won't hear from this guy again. And I spent the next month, every night writing it, and that was back in November, December, and chipping away at it a bit, every day. And I basically said, hey, I want this to come out WrestleMania week. That'd be a cool angle. And to his credit, he made it happen. So that's why, although the book calls him Dean Ambrose and not Jon Moxley, that's why the book is talking about AEW and the Jericho Cruise and the G1 Supercard with Ring of Honor and New Japan. I mean, we literally wrote it November, December, January, February, March. We might have done an edit or two in early April, in fact. So that's why it's a pretty recent book.
Oh, absolutely. And that's just a really cool story. And so Diamond Dallas Page wrote the foreword, and do you ever, and I know you said you did do his yoga stuff,
yeah.
What's your favorite thing about DDP? Like, when you met him, and, like, just tell me about who he is as a guy.
My favorite thing about DDP is that he is that guy 24/7. And, if you think about some of your favorite musicians of all time, like, let's say we're talking about the band Kiss, and Gene Simmons is singing I Want to Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day. I love Gene Simmons. He's great to interview. He's really nice when you get to him up close. Most of the stories are not true about him being difficult. But Gene Simmons is singing all these songs about booze when he doesn't drink. He's singing songs about, being with tons of women, which he used to be, but he's happily married now. So there's a character involved. DDP, on the other hand, let's say you sign up for DDP Yoga. In the early days, he used to call every single person who signed up for it. Hey, man, hey, it's Dallas. Hey, thank you very much. Like, I was a recipient of a call like that. He's like, hey, I see you're doing good. How's it go? Like, what? You? Is this really you? He actually calls people and checks in on them. That's one thing. Another thing is, if you email him, and his email address is not that hard to find, odds are he might write back in 30 seconds. It might take a day or two. He writes back. He texts back. If you ask him for help with something or how you do something, you're probably going to hear back from him. And it has nothing to do with, oh, well, Darren's a writer. This is before he agreed to write the book part for me. He's just so giving and patient and kind. And, it's a good thing he wasn't a career heel because, he wouldn't have been approachable. But the fact that he did a lot of his career as the everyman or the average guy, well, it really is an extension of who he is. And he had success before wrestling, and now he's having massive success after wrestling.
Yeah, and I was going to say, he is the everyman in terms of wrestling, and you couldn't help but... I will never forget his WCW run. I couldn't tell you one other move he did besides the Diamond Cutter, though, but you just kind of, you couldn't help but get suckered into like every storyline and everything like that, especially with him and when he fought Macho Man Randy Savage, and Savage actually did that because he wanted to put Page to the next level, and so
Yeah.
I mean, it just really is a testament to everything. So I'm
with you. They say that old thing like you don't want to meet your heroes. To me, that's not been the case. I was just telling you how awesome Gene Simmons was. Gene Simmons rules. Again, I was afraid to meet him. DDP is not a letdown on any level. I've had mostly great interactions with the people that I've interviewed, and at this point, I don't know if it's been 800 interviews, 1,000. I stopped keeping count because I started when I was 16 years old. But it's really refreshing when you can meet somebody that's successful at that level financially, they've done great work, etc., and they're a great human being that you can model yourself after, or if not model yourself after, you can learn a lot from. And I cannot stop singing his praises. When you hear haters talking about DDP, there might be something within them that's not fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of felt the same way when I recently interviewed Don Felder, who used to be the legendary guitarist of the Eagles. The guy has traveled the world, and he's worth millions and millions of dollars because the Eagles, you know. And here he is, still making music for the love of music, meeting fans, signing autographs, and he's doing a lot of work like to help to where like up and coming musicians can make their royalties and stuff through like songwriters' rights, and does a lot of charity work that he talked about, and just a very down to earth guy, you know, and super intelligent guy too. So it's very refreshing to see. And like another one for me was interviewing Doyle from the Misfits. Everybody said how much of a jerk he was and stuff like that. One of the coolest guys I've ever talked to in an interview, you know.
Yeah, both of those are people I've spoken to. I've done 2 or 3 with Doyle. I think that he's trying to smoke out or weed out the people that are going to ask bad questions. Did he do the thing to you where you ask him like, so, have you been to Milwaukee before? Yes. Like, did he do the yes/no thing to you?
No, he was. I think in like 1 or 2 questions he did, but like he was very. He's just a very matter-of-fact guy, but he was really elaborate on some of his responses because he actually liked my questions, you know, and.
Yeah. I think he could sense, you know, Matty's a great guy. He actually likes stuff. But the first time I interviewed Doyle it was after a show in New York City. This was last year. He had 3 or 4 interviews lined up back to back to back, and the tour manager's like, okay, you got 5 minutes. And so the person before me like comes out of the dressing room, walks towards me, and goes, oh, good luck. And I just found it hilarious that he was like taking a punk rock kind of character where he's like, so Doyle, do you have another album in the works? Yes. he was doing that, and you know, if you're talking to your average person, I go, well, yeah, you know what? I've written 7 songs and blah, blah, blah. So I spoke to Doyle a second time, like a month after that, and he was a little better. But then I think you're like the 5th person that's interviewed me who's also interviewed Doyle. I think we've all kind of compared notes and go, he's not a bad guy. He talks to everybody. It's just a character. And you also just mentioned Don Felder. And when I interviewed Don Felder by phone, I think you'll get a kick out of this. I go, so Don, I got a question for you. The song "Those Shoes" by the Eagles was clearly ripped off for the Razor Ramon WWF theme song in wrestling. And he kind of goes, what? And I explained, and he goes, I never watched that stuff. I was too busy. Like, okay. So I guess no one has ever asked him about the Razor Ramon theme song that clearly rips off one of his songs.
Yeah, I never realized that, but it kind of does, doesn't it? And yeah, it's just kind of funny. Like, it's just kind of funny, just kind of interviewing some of these people and how some like Doyle gets like the worst rap ever, and I'm like, all you gotta do is feed him some vegan food, and he's fine, you know. Like, I bought him a vegan pizza to kind of suck up to him a little bit, and he was great. And that dude can eat like no other. He ate it like a whole pizza in like 4 minutes. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge overlap between wrestling, horror, punk rock / hardcore / whatever the indie music is, etc. And that these are things that happen at the indie level, they happen at the major label level, or the big studio level, or, you know, wrestling on TV level. So you have your grassroots fans, you have your fair weather fans, you have the people that continue to like the people after they've no longer been on the major label or the TV network, etc. And you have, you know, disputes. So this person is the greatest. But I think what you have in all of them is you have a person who's putting themselves out in the world as a character, like I'm the toughest, or I worked harder than you, etc. And then odds are that that person is the exact opposite of who they're portraying. Like when you hear an Alice Cooper interview, isn't that the most laid-back, nice guy ever?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And funny story about Alice Cooper, I live in a small town, Iowa, and there's a legendary venue in Iowa called the Surf Ballroom, and he did a concert there. And people spot him in Southbridge Mall just trying on shoes at a Foot Locker in Iowa. And he did tell this story one time. People were like, "Are you Alice Cooper?" And he was basically like, "No, people just say I look like him," you know, and stuff like that. And he went golfing and all that stuff. He's an avid golfer. And kind of another funny story in Iowa. Blake Shelton did a show at the Surf as well, and he went to a karaoke bar, kind of disguised himself, and did Blake Shelton songs at karaoke. And people came up to him and were like, "You sounded just like Blake Shelton." And he's like, "Yeah, I get that a lot, you know," and all that stuff. So it's hilarious.
Yeah. I think that this generation of wrestlers, what I was talking about before, and this generation of performers tend to get it a lot better than the prior ones. And they have figured out a way that they can be their persona on stage and turn it on and off with more ease. But then again, on the dark side, we can say, but then again, that's what leads to mental health issues. Who knows what the real answer is? But, you know, if we're talking about Iowa and music, of course, Slipknot, Corey Taylor was on the Jericho Cruise, and that was a nice, gentle human being. And then, of course, you listen to Maggot and all the Slipknot songs, and you hear the exact opposite. I mean, even if you say, like, what he sounds like in Stone Sour versus he sounds like in Slipknot, that's different, and that's versatility. And he's a wrestling fan, and he's a horror fan, and he likes punk rock, but he also likes Cheap Trick, and, you know, one of my favorite bands ever.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, again, like punk rock, wrestling, horror, DIY, everything just all has this wonderful overlap. So podcasts, I'd say it's the same kind of thing. It's the equivalent of slow food, you know, the opposite of fast food, where people who have attention spans and will follow somebody or something even if they don't have a big hit. We're all kind of together in this culture thing, and that all leads into AEW, you know.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to see garbage entertainment. We want the best entertainment for our time and our money.
Oh, I agree 100%, and it's just like it's so accessible nowadays, and to me, like any like performer or whatever that is willing to kind of stay in character and have people believe it is just, to me, that's even more remarkable, just because of all the social media and all the, you know, all that going on, and it's incredible. It's incredible what they do, and makes me realize that there's a fine art to this, you know, and stuff like that. So, is there anything else you want to plug, like an upcoming podcast that you have or something like that, or?
Well, the podcast, the Paltrowcast with Darren Paltrowitz, I know that rolls off the tongue. It's just so catchy. I know you're not the first to tell me that. The Paltrowcast with Darren Paltrowitz, it comes out every other Wednesday. It's co-produced with puregrainaudio.com, a great Canada-based website that is growing and doing awesome. That happens every 2 weeks. So the next episode is already in the can. I taped some of it when I was out at the Sonic Temple Festival in Columbus a couple of weeks ago. that one's going to have 3 interviews. Still looking to see who the next wrestler that I have on the show is. I kind of want to please everybody, but at the same time, you please nobody when you're pleasing everybody. So it's kind of a struggle to me to go like, well, would a wrestler go well with a singer of live and a comedian? No, that's not the magic formula. It's always, how do I put 3 people together that will flow in a cool way? So that's happening. The book, Good Advice from Professional Wrestling. Maybe we'll do a sequel if the great reviews keep coming in. Because, we didn't put any quotes from a lot of great people. There's nothing from Al Snow in there, and that's probably a travesty. That's a great guy that you should get on your podcast. He is, I don't think they come any smarter than Al Snow in the business. And I write 10 articles a week beyond that. Mix of music, food, booze, travel, etc. And that leads me to do a lot of press trips. I'm going to be in Rockford, Illinois next weekend. So if you or anyone listening to this knows anything I should do in Rockford, please be in touch.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's kind of a nice segue because Cheap Trick, that's where they're from, is Rockford, Illinois, so maybe you can meet up with them, and...
I'm hoping. That's the main reason I chose Rockford for the trip. I was invited, and I turned down a lot of these trips because I go, flying stinks. I mean, which airport do you fly out of?
Oh, I really don't fly out of an airport. I just kind of travel between Iowa, Minnesota, and Illinois. Yeah. I love driving. I'm a freak. What can I say?
No, most of the people in my wife's family, some of the people in Indiana, they drive to New Jersey, and you go, what? Okay, you do you. Well, with these kinds of trips that I do, they say, okay, we'll fly you out and put you up, and you're like, great. And then once you get to the airport, and you deal with the airport scanners, and the waiting around, and then putting your suitcase in the overhead, and then waiting your turn, you go, oh, this stinks. And then you get to the destination, it's all good. And then when you're leaving, you go through all the airport stuff and getting picked up at the airport, and it stinks again. But I love the travel writing I do, and I'm hoping, I think Cheap Trick's on tour that weekend, but I'm hoping Buddy Carlos is around. That'd be a dream to properly meet that guy. I met him once for 15 seconds at a New York City gig, but hoping I get to see him in his secret drum museum that he has in his house.
Oh, yeah, that would be so cool. That would be absolutely awesome. And, yeah, we'll definitely have to talk again, and I'm looking forward to having you on. And I think I'm in the mood to talk about my favorite part of wrestling next time, and that's comedy and wrestling. So,
anytime.
Yeah,
anytime, man. That's my jam.
Yeah, me too. Like, it's so funny to listen to people, get all worked up about, all these serious angles and stuff like that. If it makes me laugh, it's the best,
Yeah, your inner voice, your inner Jim Cornette is going, goddamn! But, not to be too like Bruce Pritchard, but you're selling out the business. You expose the business. No, it's funny. Andy Kaufman rules. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. With, Joey Ryan and the penis move that he does, whatever it's called. I think that's hilarious. It's so stupid, it's funny.
Yeah, well, anytime you want to do that, man, I'm here. I'll do my homework, and we can talk about that horrible MacGruber segment, or...
That sounds good, man. Well, hey, Darren, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much, and this will be up pretty soon, so...
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much, and if you need any other info, you know where to get me, man.
All right, sounds good, Darren, and you have a nice weekend.
You do the same now. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye now.
And there you have it. I really want you to pick up the Darren Paltrowitz and Dex Ferris book called Good Advice from Professional Wrestling. Diamond Dallas Page wrote the foreword to it. It's just a really outstanding book. It has, for example, I just kind of want to talk about the 10 things successful wrestlers that you can do today. This will kind of help in terms of your mental health and for you to get through your workday. First of all, what Darren has listed is develop and pursue ambitions. Whether it's in the wrestling business or whether it's in any career, develop goals. Develop goals and reach the goals when you reach a goal, set new goals. Never be satisfied in terms of the goal that you reached. You always should want to accomplish more and stuff like that. Also, develop, demonstrate, and broadcast character. In your life, who do you represent? What are you representing? Are they good things? If they are good things, people are going to want you around. And also ponder psychology. Workers who are in demand consider how people will react to what they do, and they anticipate how their actions will make people feel. And also talk good and interestingly. Popular wrestlers practice verbal communication. Build your confidence in your life. Have something in your life that's going to generate interest from people. That's going to attract people to you. Whether it's in sales, whether it's in marketing, whether, it's just trying to make new friends, whether it's building those relationships. What do you have to offer to people? All right. And also, I really want to say do it with humility as well, because if you don't do it with humility, that's kind of a turn off as well. Put on a show. Basically, what can you do in your life to not make it boring? Live the best life that you can. All right, live in the moment and live the best life that you can. How are you going to make yourself stand out amongst your peers in your life? And also, be prepared. I have learned in the past year that that procrastination is not a good thing. That you always need to be prepared. Whether it's in the job field, whether it's in just when you're making plans like your family, your friends for the weekend, or your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever it may be. Always be prepared. And I think being spontaneous every once in a while is a good thing, but being prepared is just, you can prepare for the uncertainties of life, and that way you know how to get through it. That way you have yourself that nest egg, economically speaking, to help you get through it. Also, take bumps. In wrestling, they call it taking bumps. That might be like Shane McMahon jumping off the Hell in the Cell at WrestleMania 32 and missing The Undertaker. That is... You got to be willing to do the work in order to be successful. And to me, success is such a key to mental health. And I'm not talking financial success. I'm talking about personal success. I'm talking about having that sense of accomplishment. Also, exercising. I really want to encourage you, my listeners, to exercise, to keep your mind healthy. Even if it's just walking around the block a couple times, even if it's just going on the treadmill for 10, 15 minutes, even if it's just doing a little bit of DDP yoga, just keep your mind engaged, because the body releases endorphins, and those are, I call them happy chemicals in your body. They help you just live a happier lifestyle, and just do what's right, and think about it, and think big. Too many times in our life we go through the motions. Too many times we just, we got to get through another week of work. I want to get to the weekend. If you're that miserable at your job, take a risk. All right, take a risk and maybe see what you can do to make the job better. And maybe see what else is out there. All right. And I'm not saying you're going to be happy all the time. I really stress mental health because I know that we all enter some dark times. I know we all fight battles that nobody knows about. I want you to reach out to somebody that you love, or just somebody that's willing to listen. It is okay to not be okay. And that's just some life tips from Good Advice from Professional Wrestling by Darren Paltrowitz. He has various quotes and stories from wrestlers like Bruno Sammartino, Batista, Mark Henry, Dean Ambrose, who's now Jon Moxley in AEW. Has quotes from Selena De La Renta, who is Zelina Vega from WWE, Andrade's valet. Mark Henry, I think I said Mark Henry's name. Paul Heyman. There are so many different type of people in there as that. Shayna Baszler, who's probably one of the greatest heels ever, has a quote in there. I want you to take a listen to Darren Paltrowitz's podcast Paltrowcast for puregrainaudio.com. Pure Grain Audio is also a great website, and check out the book. Let us know what you think of the book. I would like to someday have a book study with somebody. I'm thinking about, bringing on a performer who wrote a song called Boo Radley. Her name is Kyos, Kyos, capital letters, and then lowercase I. She wrote a song called Boo Radley, and we're going to be talking about To Kill a Mockingbird in that book. I want this to just be completely different, like, just kind of talk about books, wrestling, music, maybe movies even, because I need to educate myself in movies. Those who know me don't know I don't watch very many movies, but I want to thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Madness Creation podcast, and you can find this on the YouTube channel, and you can find it on SoundCloud as well. I am doing a giveaway at 100 subscribers. And at the 100 subscriber, whoever's a 100 subscriber, I'm going to give away a copy of Good Advice from Professional Wrestling book by Darren Paltrowitz for you to check out. And it's going to be autographed by Darren Paltrowitz himself. I want to thank you so much for the time. And on that note, have a great day. And I want you to be great. And I want you to live well and be successful in everything you do in your life. I'm signing out.